In this lesson, we'll learn how to set up a new Ptex project inside of Mari. Okay, so again, I've got Mari open here, and if you want to check out the project files included with this course, you'll find here that we've got a geometry folder, and we've got lots of OBJ files here inside this folder. So these are the files I'm going to go ahead and use to create our new Ptex project. So with that said, let's jump over to Mari, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the New Project button here. And let's see here. We'll just go ahead and call this something like Gargoyle. There we go. And let me go ahead and jump over here and just browse to where I have those OBJ files saved. I'll just go ahead and resize this window so you can see. And I'll just jump over to my project files. There we go. And I'm using Mari 1.4 version 3, which allows me to select multiple pieces of geometry or multiple OBJ files at this point. So I'll just hold down the Shift key and select all my different OBJ files here. And we'll just go ahead and hit open. And you can see they're all listed here in the path field. We can scroll up and down here. We can select and remove. We can add additional pieces. So we've got all those selected. And now I'm ready to go ahead and specify my mesh options. Now, when you're creating a Ptex project inside of Mari, Mari's going to first, by default, look for UVs on the geometry that you're bringing in. So you can see under Mapping Scheme here, the default is UV if available, Ptex otherwise. If you're wanting Mari to ignore any kind of UVs that exist on the geometry and strictly go for Ptex, then you'll need to drop this down and select this Force Ptex option here. Now our next option just relates to selection sets, and you can see the default is to create those from face groups within the geometry. So we could choose that or don't create. I'll go ahead and leave that set to create from face groups. And our next option is multiple geometries per object. So when looking at these multiple OBJ files, if, say, for example, one of them included multiple pieces of geometry, then we could tell Mari that we want to merge those geometries into one, or we could create separate geometries for those OBJ files. And again, this is an option that's only available if you're using Ptex. So now I know that my geometries here are really one piece of geometry per file, so I'm not really too concerned about that. We'll just go ahead and leave that set on merge geometries into one. Alright, great. So let's go ahead and hit OK on this new project dialog. And Mari's going to present us with this next window here, the Ptex import or creation. And you can see that it's picked up on the name of the very first OBJ I had there because I didn't specify a name for this project. Just called it belt.obj. So now this first option here under import Ptex options is really only going to be available if you have a topologically equivalent Ptex file with textures in it that you want to use for the geometry you have selected. Now remember, we have multiple geometry files, multiple OBJ files that we're using to create our project, and I do have textures for those, but we're only allowed to put in one file here, so I'm not going to put those in right now. We're just going to create a blank fresh Ptex project. So let's just skip that option and jump down here to create Ptex options. Now here is where we need to make some decisions regarding the type of project we're creating to use Ptex on here. So the first thing we see here is auto size, and you're going to see here that we have world space density set by default, but we also have an option to use uniform face size here. So let's go ahead and select uniform face size just so we can look at those options. More than likely, you'll probably be using world space density, but if you're working with relatively low resolution geometry where all or most of the faces are very close to the same size, then you might try using uniform face size. So what this basically allows us to do is assign a per face texture size here, a static size for every face in that geometry. So you can see here right now my default is 64 by 64. We could drop that down and change that anywhere from 1 by 1 all the way up to 1K per face using this uniform face size option. Now we also have our format where we can choose whether we're using an 8-bit file or if we want to run something like half or float if we're going to be using HDR images. And we can also set sort of the default color that's going to be filled on that channel that's created. So let's go ahead at this point, and instead of choosing this uniform face size, let's go ahead and switch over and talk a little bit about world space density. The first thing you should notice here is that the per face texture size is no longer available to us. That's because world space density works a little bit differently than uniform face size. When it comes to world space density, face sizes will vary based on the world space of our object here. And what I mean here, if we jump down and look at this next setting, it's called world space texels. Now, texels may be a new word for you, but don't be confused by that. That's very similar to pixels, only in terms of a texture. Simply, a texel is simply a texture element or texture pixel. So the way world space density works is it's going to take this world space texels setting and it's going to apply this number of texels to each centimeter of world space. Now, if I jump over here to Maya really quickly, you can see that I've used the measure distance tool to show here that we've got about 252 centimeters from top to bottom on our model here. So that'll just give you an idea of what we're looking at in terms of world space size. Now, you may have also noticed that that model was fairly dense. That's actually been created in ZBrush by one of our creative dev authors, Brian Parnell. So, again, back to world space density. With world space density, 16 texels per centimeter of world space density is going to mean that smaller faces are going to receive less resolution, while larger ones are going to receive more resolution. So with a project like this one, it's going to benefit us to go with world space density. If we were to go with uniform face size for this particular project, it would involve a lot of manual changes to the resolution for certain areas where maybe the resolution is too high, maybe the resolution is too low. So world space density is going to suit this project best. Again, I'm not going to be using any HDR images to texture this character, so I'll just leave this set at 8-bit. And I'm going to go ahead and apply to all the objects that we had selected here. So let me go ahead and hit the Apply to All Objects button. And you can see that Mari's going to go through the process here of creating our new Ptex project based on all the geometry that I had selected. And there we go. Mari's finished creating that project. So let's go ahead and just take a look here at what we've got going. Now, again, this is going to be a little different than a UV-based project here inside of Mari. You can see here that both the Ortho/UV tab as well as just the UV tab, they're grayed out. We can only work here on the Ortho tab or the Perspective tab. So if we jump over here to our channels, you'll see that we've just created a single channel per object, and it's just called Ptex. And if we go ahead and open up our Objects palette, just go ahead and drag this down, you can see that we have an individual object for each one of those pieces of geometry that we included with this project. Well, this is great if you're starting to texture your geometry from scratch, but what if you've been passed a Ptex project from another artist who's already started painting Ptex textures for this character inside of Mari, and maybe they want you to work on the project a little bit. Maybe they have actual Ptex files for you instead of OBJ files. Well, we're going to learn how we can handle those files inside of Mari in the next lesson.